Thanks for joining us here in the third session of the day in Seminar Room 1 of the Grad Ireland Graduate Careers Fair. My name is Rory Kavanagh, I'm the editor with Grad Ireland. And we have our session here today is Assessment Centres, How to Succeed at Assessment Centres, Insider Advice on How to Succeed. So I'm delighted to welcome our panel. We have Siobháin Scanlon from Musgraves, we have Gregg Duffy from EY, and we have Katie Buckley from ESB.
Fidelity International. That's right.
I'm really shining here today. Someone messing with me from Fidelity International. So, Greg, apologies for that. Thanks for joining us here today. So, listen, we'll get things started. Siobháin, you might just give us a quick overview of your role with Musgraves and the assessment centre process that you operate.
Yep. So I'm the Early Careers Manager in Musgraves. I'm responsible for everything with the name graduate in it. So that's from recruitment, attraction to selection, training, all those different elements. When we think about the context of assessment centres for Musgraves, it's the final part of our assessment process. So our applicants will go through online assessments, video interviews, and then the assessment centre. And the assessment centre for us is very much that experience where we get to see candidates acting through different activities, different ways, and we're assessing the competencies of them in different ways as they go through those different activities. So it's typically be group discussions, a couple of group discussions, presentation, and a competency interview as well.
Greg?
So I'm very similar, I suppose. My name's Gregg Duffy, so Fidelity International. I'm the early careers recruitment lead for UK and Ireland, so look after the hiring of apprentices, grads, interns, and I suppose bringing young people into the roles. I think our assessment process is a fully strengths-based process, so very similar to competency-based with maybe a different layer to it, but pretty similar. Assessment centres, we have pretty much a strengths-based interview. It's about 45 minutes, pretty standard across all our programs. We also have case studies that people complete, so it usually includes a bit of individual kind of analysis and work, and then some group discussion, and then a bit of a conversation with an assessor afterwards about the work that had happened and the discussion took place. And then some of our roles in the more investment management roles have a bit of a technical exercise to them, but really happy to cover off some of that. And similar to what you just said, I suppose we have a process that comes before that as well, which is some online assessments and video interviews as well.
If anyone's just joined us late, just please put on your headset to channel 0 and you can hear us. Katie, if someone had never heard of an assessment centre or didn't really know what it was, how would you describe it and how does it work for ESB?
Yeah, so I manage the early years team, so early years, undergrads, graduates, apprentices, etc., so much like the panel members here. So how would I explain an assessment centre? It's really a varying different activities or tasks, a process that a company will put you through to see different strengths, different skills. So for example, from ESB, we would have an online application form, we'd have an aptitude test, and then we would have a competency-based interview. So our assessment centre encompasses all of that to see different skills and in different attributes, really.
Okay. And Siobháin, in terms of how they have evolved over the last few years, I mean, I know we've obviously there's been I know Musgraves have been recruiting during the pandemic, and you managed to keep your assessment centre process running. How has it changed over the last few years, and if what does the process in 2022 look like compared to 2019? What are some of the learnings that you've learned as an organisation?
And what I would say to everybody is assessment centres will evolve year on year. So certainly from our perspective, before the pandemic, we would have had all our assessment centres would have been in person. So when you're doing an assessment centre in person, there's a real benefit to it at times because you get to meet people, you get to have a chat, but sometimes it can be a bit daunting as well because you've got assessors sitting outside watching you doing different things and you're like, So we actually moved to virtual during the pandemic, and we do those over Zoom, and we also use a specific platform that shares the exercises with the candidates as well. And the real benefit of Zoom is that we can, as assessors, we can kind of sit in the background, so we turn off our cameras and we're on mute, so quite often the candidates nearly forget that we're there, so it lends itself to a nice conversation as well as we go through that. So from our perspective, the exercise we used, we didn't really have to adapt them hugely to move from in-person to the virtual experience. For us, there's a piece that we're looking to evolve again this year, so we are continuing to do them virtually. But one of the things that we'd like to do is to give candidates more of an insight and an opportunity to meet with us and in a slightly more informal way, and to get to understand a bit more about Musgraves and the culture, which is probably the piece from a virtual perspective that can be a bit more challenging rather than actually going in and being on site when you get to meet people in person. But I think it is something for us, as I think for the candidates, the virtual can give a lot of benefits because of that piece. We can do it from your home. it's comforting, I suppose, to know that you've got familiar things around you to be able to do that. You have the piece where you can have the assessors off camera, so slightly less daunting. I think there are definitely benefits to it, and I think for candidates, I think it's about understanding how to put themselves across in the best way from the virtual side. Will retain an element of virtual into the future. How much is going to be there, I don't know, but I think there's benefits to both processes.
Thanks, Siobháin. And Greg, I know I'm talking to three organisations here that hire a diverse range of people with a diverse range of backgrounds, and transferable skills is very important. If you were someone who's, say, had been invited to attend an assessment centre in the coming weeks, but you might have thought that, I didn't expect, to get this far in the process, and I didn't think, I was particularly suited for this sort of technical role, or what advice would you have for someone who maybe, basically has exceeded their own expectations and been invited to an assessment centre? What are some of the key things you would start preparing? It's a tough one to land you with.
It's a good question. I mean, I think firstly take some confidence from that. It's all our processes we try to be as inclusive as we can, but they are competitive processes at the end of the day, and so to make it to the final stage is an achievement in itself. And I would hope that candidates take a bit of confidence from that as they prepare for the assessment centre. Other than that, I mean, I think regardless of the role, we're agnostic in terms of the background that someone has. We want more students from different backgrounds to apply, whether it's for technical roles or non-technical roles. It brings diversity of thought into the organisation. But I would just encourage candidates, I suppose, firstly do your research, really try to understand the organisation that you're applying for, not just from a consumer perspective, but also maybe how that company makes its money. It's always good to kind of come into roles with that understanding. And then also, I suppose, to think and reflect on their own experiences and their own strengths. And you'll have learned things in your own education in the classroom, but also learned a lot outside the classroom, whether you're in societies or in sports teams or hobbies or whatever. And what strengths you may have developed during those experiences, and how you can bring them to the table with the role they've applied for.
And to what extent, Katie, are they competitive versus collaborative in terms of your own assessment centres? But even generally speaking, to what extent do people be prepared for teamwork and to excel, individually? Yeah,
so we try and make it around the candidate and the candidate experience. Actually, we want this to be a nice experience. It is, absolutely. It is massively competitive. It is, because people are very keen to get onto a graduate programme, so it is a competitive process. But that's when it comes to prepping, practicing your psychometric testing, do as many as you can before you go into that blind. And if you do reach the interview, we want you to do well, right? So it is, a collaborative approach in that sense, yeah.
Sorry, I'll stay with yourself, Katie. What are some of the misconceptions that people might have about it in terms of that dynamic? About assessment centres that they're...
Yeah, well, they're impossible to do. I'm not going to, it's too competitive. I'm not going to bother applying. Put your prep in. Don't go into it blind. As much preparation as you can, and that goes for the interview as well. It will be very apparent if you haven't prepped for an interview when we're sat meeting you. And as I say, we want this to be a good experience. So as part of ESB's process, we've also got a personality test in there as well, and that just really aids us. Actually, when to go for a different maybe type of personality that maybe not as confident giving an interview, well, actually we've got the personality test as well. So if you're not shining, if you're maybe a little bit more introverted, etc. So we try and look at it from all aspects.
And in terms of aspects, Siobháin, sorry.
I was going to just to add to that. I think when we think like group exercises, I think often there is a bit of a misconception about those, and candidates kind of can come into those and think that to do well in this exercise, I have to win. I have to be the person who gets my solution accepted, or people take my suggestion. And actually what we're looking for is good collaborative behaviours. Will this person be a good colleague? Will they listen to others' inputs? Will they bring the quieter member of the group into the conversation? Will they seek feedback on their own ideas and be willing to concede and step back if someone has a better idea? So it's not just about, I need to win and be the person who leads the conversation and gets the results. Often the candidate who performs best can be the person who facilitates others and is just demonstrates good collegiate behaviour.
Okay, and I suppose we have to think it in that the assessment centre is in some ways a manufactured office environment or potentially an office environment, and we all don't want to work in an office that's filled with introverts. We all work in an office that's filled with leaders. So Siobháin, the assessment centre is designed to leverage the best from both sides of that personality arc.
Yeah, and I suppose as my fellow panelists have alluded to, I suppose there's a sense sometimes when you think about assessment centres that you have to be fully on and talking and participating the whole time, and that's not necessarily the case. I do want to point out you do have to participate, because if you don't participate, we can't assess you. But it's quality over quantity. So it is going to be the person, as you've said, it's about the behaviours that are demonstrated. So we're very transparent about our process. So you go onto our website, you'll see all the competencies we look for. Those are the competencies we are assessing. So if we look at things in terms of effective communication, if we look at growth orientation, all those kind of things, then that's what we're looking for as part of the exercises. So it might be the person who is more reflective, who maybe takes a bit of time to settle into the exercise and think about it, and then comes forward with just really fantastic idea or really good at contribution. That person will potentially score better than somebody who's talking constantly. Because if you're talking constantly, then are you letting other people into the discussion? Are you hearing others? Are you facilitating others while you go through that? So I accept it can be a bit challenging, and I say this as an introvert. I accept it can be challenging to go into a group discussion and to make your voice heard. I would encourage you to find the way to best participate from the way that you think you can add value, if that's something that you are nervous about from an assessment point of view. And very much to your point, it's not about necessarily being the winner. As an assessor, where yes, you have to get an outcome in terms of the exercise, but it's more about how you get the outcome and how you behave in terms of acting towards it that we're assessing as well. And that can really be helpful for somebody who may be not as extroverted in their communication style.
I suppose for someone who is in that camp, who is quite introverted, who does dread the idea of going in with 24 people into a room and trying to show their best selves, what are some exercises or tactics you would suggest maybe they would do to boost their confidence, or at least provide them with a skill set? Maybe it's a psychometric preparation. What would you recommend?
I suppose I can talk to the way our assessment centre is set up. So you would be doing two group activities, and you'd be doing competency-based interviews. So we don't do the psychometrics of this part of it. So in terms of the preparation for that, what I would say in the first instance is remember you're there for a reason. If we're inviting you to an assessment centre, it's because we feel you have potential. So don't look around and see others talking, saying, oh, I should be doing this, or I'm not going to get it because they come from this college. Think about just you're there because we've seen something in you and we want to explore that a bit more. So have that front to your mind when you go in there. Because sometimes people might get overwhelmed by seeing other people and it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to get it because of that. If something goes wrong in an exercise as well, don't get caught up in that. You have an opportunity in the next two exercises to pick yourself up and to move on. In terms of the preparation, what I'm going to share with you, it sounds a bit bizarre, but there's research behind it. There's things called power poses. So some of you may be familiar with Amy Cuddy. She's a lecturer in Harvard, and she did this talk about how body movement and how different postures can actually impact on our confidence, and by changing your physiology you can change your confidence. And there's this one it's about making yourself feel bigger and you feel more confident. And there's this one called the Wonder Woman pose. So legs and men can do it as well, but it's one where literally you stand in a power pose, you stand up, your hips apart, hands in your hip like that, and you stand like Wonder Woman. And if you do that for a couple of minutes, you will actually feel more confident. And I would say this with the experience. I had to do this going to an executive meeting with our CEO. I literally spent 15 minutes in a meeting room locked up by myself doing breathing exercises and doing this exercise to get myself in the mind space. It works. But genuinely, these are exercises that can get you in the mindset to feel like I am confident, I'm there. Set the intention to participate in whatever form that is comfortable for you. If it's not, I'll manage the time, and then you might give you a role, and then you can start paying attention. Bring in others into the discussion, draw on them, and look for ways where you can add value and to demonstrate your ability from that perspective. So don't set massive goals and say I have to do this. Just things to compose yourself, to remember you're there for a reason, and say, okay, right, how can I learn this?
Katie, what advice do you have in that in terms of composing yourself and kind of goal setting in terms of what you can realistically achieve?
Yeah. As cringeable as this is, two things I would say is number one, we've got Wonder Woman talking in front of a mirror, and I know it's just horrendous. Or just making out a speech and just doing it in front of the mirror. You know, my name's Katie, I work at ESB, however short it is. And the other thing would be is to make a video of yourself. Again, it's the worst. I can't even listen to myself if I ever have to watch it. But if you make a video, give yourself like a paraphrase, you know, and just get used to speaking, especially virtual interviews now, I think across the board. Just get used to seeing yourself, get used to hearing yourself, and just practicing in terms of that.
A number of people would have that experience from doing a video interview, maybe, which could be part of the process as well. So as uncomfortable as it is, people are getting experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, I think.
So
you know,
Wonder Woman to speak in front of the mirror. Greg, what would you have?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think to draw them both together, I think people often forget that communication is much more than what you say, right? It's like, it's your body language and your tone of voice, and sometimes, unfortunately, virtually, that can be a little bit harder to kind of get across. And so I think, you know, when you are doing a video interview, or you are doing an interview with a person, just to make sure that, you know, so you're saying posture, body, like sit up in your chair and be, you know, enthused, and that our process is strengths-based, so we're assessing candidates on their capability, but also on their motivation and their engagement. And so we want to make sure that candidates can do what they're talking about, but also they want to do it and they find ways to do it, and they're enthusiastic when they talk about it. So yeah, to bring them both together, I suppose, encourage candidates to think about how they're coming across in their interviews as well as.
And in terms of feedback, Greg, the same way people are unsuccessful in an interview, they're trying to ask for feedback, and which most employers are happy to provide. Are they in the same position in an assessment centre? Can they ask for feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. We give feedback to every candidate comes to the assessment centre.
Okay. Siobháin, same with yourself. I mean, is something that you find that you're being requested for from candidates?
Certainly, you get the request for it, and from some people. Some people may not necessarily like the feedback, but we will give them feedback. But what we have found years and years, I'm around a long time in the graduate space and recruiting, and we have had graduates who take feedback and come back the next year and act on that feedback and have been successful because they've taken it all. We've actually had candidates contact me and say, look, thanks for that feedback. I went to somewhere else and I actually got a job here, which is great to hear. And it is that piece where if you give something that's meaningful to them, to be able to say, okay, well, look, in terms of your interview, if you do this, it'll give you a much better opportunity to be able to shine. Then I think people are grateful for that. But I would say that when asking for feedback, it comes with the caveat that there may be things they may not necessarily want to hear, but take it in the manner which is being offered, which is that it's being offered for the purpose of helping you to improve for the next time around.
And Katie, if someone has got to the assessment centre phase maybe 2 or 3 times and finds they're not proceeding past that phase, and it could be in a similar industry or a relatable industry, what might some of those reasons be, do you think? If you could, I know it's hard to pinpoint them, but if you could, a case study of why someone may be tripping up.
Yeah,
may think they have all the technical skills, they have the background, they have the experience.
It might just come down to the interview and the competencies, and really nailing those competencies as well, you know, and prepping them. So when you're sharing your examples, we want them to be authentic, we want them to be real, we need specifics. So think about what you need to get across. So what you might think, I have a lot of experience in X. A lot of experience to you might not be a lot of experience to me, so get specific with your examples. Okay. So I think a lot of people do fall down slightly and match your example with the competency we're asking. So again, as one of the panel members said, you know, you'll know the competencies before you head into that interview. So prep all your examples. It doesn't matter if it's from waitressing in a cafe that you've had or a project that you've worked on at college. You know, we want to know about it. So we need those skills demonstrated, that you will be able to demonstrate those with us if you are successful.
Okay. And I suppose for many of your roles, I mean, you are looking to recruit people with neurodiverse backgrounds, people who have had disabilities. Are there, modifications made to your process that can accommodate people from different backgrounds and different requirements?
Absolutely, we do all blind testing. So as in shortlisting, So in terms of our diversity piece, it's all blind. So we don't know which college you're at. We don't know if we're meeting somebody, you know, that might need those allowances. So all the allowances are given that we need. That might be extra time to prepare. That might be meeting in person instead of virtual. Whatever it is, we'll make those allowances.
Okay. Greg, you want to add on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. I think, yeah, our process is CV blind, so a manager will never know before they meet you your background or where you studied or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, we do encourage students to disclose if they feel comfortable, and we use that information to support them. So if they need, if they're deaf and they need a signer, or they need extra time in tests, or they need a screen reader or whatever it is, we can work to kind of help provide them with that. But yes, we hope that students feel comfortable disclosing that, but we would support a student regardless of what it is they need.
I suppose you wanted to actually add confidence for people going into assessment centres that they're going in very much on a level playing field, and that you're not looking at someone's entire back catalogue before they walk in the door.
From the neurodiverse perspective.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly, I mean, it's knowing that the opportunities are there to ask for that. And again, I completely appreciate that depending where you're coming from, you may feel comfortable disclosing that or not. Similar to the other process here, we would have different allowances at different stages depending on what people are comfortable in terms of disclosing from that perspective. I do think the likes of the virtual has the ability to level the playing field a bit more in some sense, because you have the opportunity to do it from your home in a comfortable surrounding, which can help in terms of the nerves and anxiety at times. And I think that we found that candidates, I've actually 4 graduates with me today, and they've all came through the virtual process. And if you want to go up and talk to them about the process, there's like, I actually quite liked it. And you kind of get into the process at the end of the day in terms of the discussion and that side of it. So I think there are certain elements of having evolved that to the virtual would certainly benefit for candidates who are coming from different backgrounds.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions from anyone here about the assessment centre process? Anyone's been called for one, or anyone has been called for one recently? And no? Any particular questions? No? Okay. Can you might just give us an overview of your... Sorry.
Something you saw in the work that you didn't expect to see during an assessment that you're quite happy to see?
It's a question here from an attendee. That's something that you might have seen in an assessment centre from someone that you may not have, during the interview, you may not have expected to see such a candidate display. Or maybe an example of something that really surprised you positively in the assessment centre. Could you give us an example? Sorry, much on the spot, Katie.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So last year, part of the process would have been to do a presentation that you had time to prepare for, and that you would present within the interview process. So actually, some of those examples would be, really surprising, maybe some of the competencies that we can see that somebody's really put the time in. They've really prepared an amazing presentation, and then maybe not so good on the competencies. So that's kind of the only example I can kind of think of off the top of my head that might have been surprising, through the interview process.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you see candidates who are just really well prepared, often I think, and check the news the morning of. It's always great when you see a candidate come in. Actually, I saw your CEO spoke this morning and mentioned this, or you put out this piece of news article, or this piece of media, and I don't know about it. But the candidate knows about it, and that for me, I think, is always just shows really good
done the research.
Yeah, it's good research. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Sorry.
Just to follow up on that, really specific, like what sort of they came up with the project, what kind of work did they do?
I don't. Tell you what, maybe afterwards we could maybe just come up and have a chat. We might get something a bit more specific. Is that okay? All right, we can. Posture and body language. Well, I know we've talked a little bit about posture and body language. How important is it? Do you find people struggle with it post-pandemic, Siobháin? Body language in a room?
It's funny because we're having a conversation this morning, even just in terms of students going around, and there are differences from a few years back in terms of people are probably a bit more reticent in terms of coming forward a bit, or shaking hands, or even more on the phone and things like that, because we've got some focus on the virtual. What I would say from an assessment perspective, or from an interview perspective, would encourage you to have as a relaxed and open a body language as possible for your own perspective, because if you're nervous, then you will tense up, and then that has an impact on your own performance at the end of the day. So a lot of it is for yourselves. For example, as an assessor, I wouldn't be saying, they have their arms crossed and I'm going to interact them off. It's not from that perspective. It's more from if you are a person who may not be talking a lot in the assessment, but you're drawing other people in using your hands, or you're engaging with others and things like that. That's something that we can see that you're collaborative by nature. So the little indicators like that we'll be taking into account as we go through it. So but really from the body perspective, posture
perspective.
Thank you. I lost the word there for a second. what I would, it's really to make yourself as comfortable as possible. Now, comfortable is not like that in the chair, but it's to be as relaxed and to be attentive and to be paying attention and following the conversation.
And Greg, I suppose for someone who's maybe English isn't their first language, or has never been in that situation before, things like that. What advice would you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all work in multinational organisations and diverse teams, and we're all very comfortable working with individuals who maybe English isn't their first language. I think if you're in a group exercise, maybe recognising that someone perhaps you might need to rephrase things and just be a good colleague. I think if you are that individual, I think it's fine to recognise that and ask for clarification and just try to be a bit more confident if you need a bit more support. But
but at the end of the day, people are in the assessment centre because you see the potential, not because you want to expose weaknesses. That's not why they're there.
The assessment centre is there. We're there to get the best out of you and try to give you a situation where you can display your strengths and explain to us how you might come in and do well in the role. We're not there to kind of trick you or trip you up. Everything we're trying to do is try to support it. So yeah, I can't imagine it would be an issue.
Okay. Any more questions from anyone? Okay. Sorry, just to wrap up, a quick overview of maybe your own graduate program and closing dates and where people can find more information.
Yeah. So our applications are open for our grad 2023. They close on 24th of October. So open for a month. So we cover obviously engineering, HR, IT, finance. So really great opportunities. We have a really good program. So 2.5 years currently, and you get rotated within that discipline as well. So you're having exposure to really all kind of business units within ESB. As I say, it's competitive, but get those aptitude tests practiced, do as many as you can, get your applications in, and look, best of luck and hope to see you at interview stage.
What stand are you on? So we can find you here.
Say again?
What stand number are you on?
So we're right at the back. We've got the CV clinic. Don't know what number it is, but anyway, we're right at the back. Yeah.
Great. Quick overview of your own program.
I mean, we're mostly recruiting interns in Dublin, so we've got a summer internship program, which is a rotational program, so students will spend time across asset management operations, which is like fund accounting and corporate actions and a couple of different areas of that. We also have trading roles, we have currency roles, so yeah, a pretty varied program. Also technology, so yeah, we'll tailor the internship to so we're currently open. We'll be open until about 27th of November for the internship role, and we're also accepting pre-registrations for our graduate apprenticeship roles.
Okay. And Siobháin, your own program?
Yeah, so our application window isn't open yet, but if you go to our website, musgravegraduates.com, you can register your interest and we will email you when it's open. It's due to open on the 10th of October, and it'll be open for around a month. So again, for those of you who may not be familiar with Musgrave, we have Super Value Centre, Daybreak, Donnybrook Fair. We own all of those brands. We will recruit graduates similar to ESB in discipline specific, so we're hiring for buying, finance, data science, IT, supply chain and retail operations are the areas that we're looking for. So again, the program is typically 2 years for the majority of the streams, 3 years for finance, and over the course of that you would rotate within the discipline itself. We have opportunities across Cork, Dublin and Belfast. Again, our advice to you is just make sure that you look at the websites, because I think we're all very helpful. We're very transparent in our process. We give a lot of information about what we look for and tips to help you succeed as well. So my advice to you is check the websites for the areas that you're applying to and just make sure you take on board the advice that was given there.
Okay, thanks very much. No other questions, we'll wrap up this session. Thanks so much to Siobháin and to Greg and to Katie for joining us. And
Thank you.
Got something from today's session. Thanks very much.
Thanks.